We'll now speak to Omar Nashabe, who's a criminal justice analyst, and he's also a former human rights advisor to the Lebanese government, joining us from Beirut. Welcome to Al Jazeera. So the laws of war do require parties to give warnings, but the warnings don't give carte blanche to kill, do they? Can you just explain how Israel's bombing of a sovereign nation, densely populated area, violate international law and the Geneva Conventions?
Yes. Well, the international humanitarian law is basically a law that governs, that organizes wars and says that where things are prohibited, it is prohibited to target civilians. And unless these civilians lose their status as civilians. And when do they lose their status, according to the law? When they perform acts that endanger the enemy. But how do you actually prove that? And, when you threaten a hospital, like, for example, the Israelis are threatening today the Sahel hospital, and they actually sent a warning that this hospital is being used to store money for Hezbollah or weapons. Well, and they distributed images and pictures. Well, the hospital was evacuated, but, when, the underground, the basement was searched, and journalists were there, the army was there. The hospital is a private hospital. It's part of the medical association, and it's registered in the Ministry of Health. It is not a legitimate target. And targeting a hospital and targeting civilians is a war crime. And it is the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court to look into these crimes and prosecute those who actually commit these crimes.
Right.
Let me just remind perhaps that there is a request by the prosecutor from the ICC to issue an arrest warrant for Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Gallant. However, the judges for 5 months now have not confirmed these arrest warrants until today.
Right. So as you're saying, I mean, anyone who commits a war crime is criminally liable. But what about those countries that facilitate war crimes by providing weapons to countries like Israel, to Netanyahu, to carry out these types of attacks? I mean, Western nations, some of them are being described as giving Netanyahu's government political and diplomatic cover for atrocities.
Yeah, well, there is a case. There is a case today at the International Court of Law. That is a case by Nicaragua against Germany for providing weapons that facilitate genocide. And this case is an ongoing case. The International Court is looking into that case. However, they can be complicit and they can aid and facilitate genocide and war crimes, and they can be held accountable too. But you have to prove that, and you have to show that. And now, I think that after 12 months, however, I'm not very optimistic, because after 12 months of genocide in Gaza, and after, so many people were slaughtered and the hospitals were bombed and doctors were killed or kidnapped by the Israelis, and Al-Shifa Hospital, Indonesian Hospital, Ahli Hospital, Kamal Adwan Hospital. So now, I mean, it's normal that people in Lebanon fear that this Israeli crime seems to be, seems to have no boundaries. No one is stopping the Israelis from committing more crime, from violating international humanitarian law, and well, the population is terrified by the fact that the world is silent.
How does, so on that point then, how does international law define proportionality, and how do these principles apply to Lebanon right now?
Well, there are two principles, the proportionality and precaution. And these are main principles in the international humanitarian law. And well, you can see the extent of destruction of, villages and towns. And this seems to be like mass destruction that is against the law. The law says that you cannot actually destroy when there's no necessity as a necessity for war. I mean, there's no necessity. You are actually destroying whole villages. And in these villages, there are community centers, there are places of worship, there are also healthcare centers that are being destroyed. I know an organization, Amil Association, is an independent association. It is not linked to any political party. Their health centers all over the South have been destroyed and devastated. They offer health care for thousands of people. Now they have to, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. The situation in Lebanon, the humanitarian situation, is getting worse by the hour, by the day, and the winter is getting near. and things are going to get more difficult. And I think the international community has a duty to move fast before things get uglier, before more people suffer and die. This is really, I mean, the silence of the world is incomprehensible. We do not understand why the world is acting this way that seems to be complicit to and seems to be a genocide enabler. I mean, it seems that so many nations are so permissive with this Israeli criminal acts that are being repeated in Gaza and now spreading to Lebanon.
All right. Thank you so much, Omar Nashabe. Thank you for joining us from Beirut. Now,
make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.